The story you're about to hear is based on a real case reported by Peruvian authorities in 2009, a case some believe was staged and others think was part of something far more disturbing. It draws from public reports, known patterns of organized crime, and the Andean legend of the Pishtaco, a myth that may have more truth behind it than we're told. This content is speculative and meant for educational and investigative purposes only. No direct accusations are being made. Viewer discretion is advised. The truth does not change according to our ability to stomach it. Flannery O'Connor.
Deep in the jungled region of Huánuco, Peru, surrounded by thick vegetation and isolated hamlets, the rumors start like they always do, in the quiet. People disappearing, children vanishing on the road to school, men found with their throats slit, bodies mutilated, and something off. Something missing. The locals say it's the Pishtaco. They always have. The Pishtaco is a figure as old as conquest, a white man or someone who works for him who prowls the mountains at night to steal human fat. In ancient times, they said the Spaniards used it to grease their weapons. In modern whispers, it's for science or for beauty. For the rich, it's a story told to frighten children and one few outsiders ever take seriously. But this time, in 2009, the whispers aren't just folklore. They make headlines. Because this time, the Peruvian National Police say they've caught them. The news conference is surreal. Police General Eusebio Felix Murga steps up to the mic and tells the world they've broken up a gang that murders people to extract their fat. He names them Los Pishtacos. The suspects are poor, rural men. Their motive, the police say, is money. According to the authorities, they were luring victims with fake job offers, taking them into the forest and murdering them. Then comes the claim that stuns the world. Police announce that this human fat was being sold on the black market. It sounds like something out of a horror movie, a grotesque twist on Perfume, the story of a murderer. But maybe Perfume wasn't just fiction after all. Like so many horror films, maybe it was closer to the truth than anyone realized. Because these weren't screenwriters talking. These were statements from Peru's National Police. And they didn't just tell the world a story. They held up bottles, cloudy, yellowish liquid, allegedly human fat, seized during raids in Lima and Huánuco. Reality was starting to look a lot like cinema, only bloodier. Journalists scramble for details. Were there victims? Yes, police say. At least 60 disappearances in the region might be linked to the gang, and at the center of it all is Hilario Caña Quispe, a 56-year-old man, who, according to police, is not just a farmer. He is the ringleader of a murder-for-fat network that has been operating deep in the Peruvian jungle. The officers put a tape recorder in front of him and hit record. He begins to speak. "We cut the throats, we opened the bodies, we took out the fat," he says. "We melted it, we poured it into bottles." It's the kind of confession that makes headlines in minutes. Authorities quickly arrest 3 more alleged accomplices, Segundo Castillejos Agüero, Marcos Veramendi Principe, and Enedina Estela Claudio. The gang, according to the press conference, has already collected 17 liters of human fat. 2 plastic containers filled with yellowish grease are presented to reporters as evidence. Police say it tested positive for human origin, allegedly extracted from the thorax and thighs of victims, and the price? $15,000 per liter, says General Eusebio Felix Murga, head of Peru's Criminal Investigation Unit. "We believe this fat was being sold to foreign cosmetic laboratories." That claim, human fat for anti-wrinkle creams, ricochets around the globe, CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, The Guardian. All of them repeat it. The official version is simple. The gang lures victims with job offers or rides. Once isolated in the forest, they're murdered. Fat is extracted using rustic tools, knives, wooden planks, candles. It's then heated in metal trays and funneled into plastic containers. The product is sent to Lima, where it may be shipped abroad. But very quickly, the story starts to fall apart. First, scientific experts speak out. Dermatologists, plastic surgeons, and biochemists from Peru, Spain, and the US call the police's claims absurd. Human fat decomposes rapidly unless preserved under specific conditions, says Dr. Samuel Oporto, a Lima-based cosmetic surgeon. There is no practical, medical, or cosmetic market for anonymous human fat. This is pseudoscience. Then, journalists begin digging and find major holes. Police never clearly identify a single named victim. There are no confirmed missing persons cases officially linked to the gang. The supposed buyers remain anonymous. No corporations or clients are ever named. And crucially, the claim that the gang had been operating for years is not backed up with concrete evidence. Let's walk through these points, not to refute them, but to give them the weight and voice they deserve. The police never clearly identified a single named victim. That is not proof nothing happened. It might be proof of how well it was covered up. In Latin America, when organized crime disposes of a body, it's not left in a ditch for CSI to find. It's incinerated, dissolved, buried in mass graves, dropped in rivers, erased. You think they'd leave an ID behind? There are no confirmed missing persons cases officially linked to the gang. Officially means nothing when corruption is involved. People go missing every day, and most don't make it into any system. Families are too poor to file reports, or too scared, or too connected to the same system that let it happen. There is no confirmation when silence is the law of the land. The supposed buyers remain anonymous. Of course they do. What multinational is going to step up and say, yes, we buy human fat extracted by a machete in the jungle? You'd have to be psychotic or suicidal to admit that. These kinds of buyers exist in the shadows, behind shell companies and intermediaries. You don't order this stuff on Amazon. You order it through chains of deniability. The claim that the gang had been operating for years is not backed up with evidence. That's because organized crime doesn't leave receipts. If you expect PowerPoint slides and Excel files, you don't understand how these operations work. Evidence gets destroyed, witnesses disappear, informants are silenced. It's not a failure of proof, it's a feature of the system. And here's the bigger point. In Latin America, and not just there are entire economies built on people who are never named, who vanish without noise, trafficked, mutilated, sold, burned, gone, and the people doing it have more power than the police, more money than the courts, and better lawyers than the government. So, when someone says there's no evidence, they're not solving a case. They re-protecting themselves from what happens if they look too closely. They say there were no victims, no buyers, no missing persons linked. But in places where bodies disappear and silence is currency, that's not an investigation. It's a cover-up with a badge. Back to the story. A few days later, the Peruvian media drops a bombshell. One of the suspects says his confession was forced, under torture. Even members of the Interior Ministry begin distancing themselves. An anonymous official tells La Repubblica that the entire operation smells of a montage, a staged case designed to distract the public. The context? At the time, Peru's police forces were under heavy pressure and scrutiny over corruption and incompetence scandals. Some critics believe the Fat Gang story was a media smokescreen, a grotesque but flashy narrative to draw attention away from other political failures. The Interior Ministry issues an internal statement. The case is under review, but no further press conferences are held, no trials, no convictions. The suspects quietly disappear from the headlines. Within weeks, the story that had shocked the world collapses under its own weight. Most international outlets quietly move on. But in Huánuco, the old people keep whispering. Pishtaco, they say. We told you. They always take the fat. But the questions don't fade. If the story was false, why was it fabricated? And if it wasn't, why was it buried? Some believe the police, under pressure from mounting scandals, created the story as a distraction, an attention-grabbing tale so shocking it would overwhelm news cycles. Others say the confessions were coerced. The fat was just animal grease, and the police invented a gang that never existed. But in Peru, especially in rural regions like Huánuco, the legend of the Pishtaco has always been more than a ghost story. The Pishtaco is a figure born of colonial trauma. He symbolizes foreign exploitation, the idea that outsiders, or those who serve them, come to drain indigenous people of their life force, their dignity, their very flesh. During the Spanish conquest, indigenous communities believed conquistadors extracted fat from native corpses to grease their guns and church bells. Later, in the 20th century, these fears evolved. White doctors stealing organs, anthropologists taking blood samples, road workers stealing children. The 2009 case, whether real or staged, reignited all of it. Even today, if you travel through the Andes and ask about the Pishtaco, you won't hear about press conferences or lab tests. You'll hear about men in white coats, about pickups with no license plates, about people who vanished and were never found. And the story lives on in internet corners, TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, where younger generations repackage the legend with hashtags and filters. But underneath, it's still the same story. A story of poverty, disposability, and the commodification of the human body. A story that asks, what if your flesh was worth more than your life? Whether or not Los Pishtacos were real in 2009, the fear they represent, that's never left. And maybe, just maybe, that is what made the story so believable in the first place. Could this story actually be real? Now this is the part that really makes your hair stand on end, because yes, it could be. And here's why it's not a wild theory. Latin America's context. Thousands of disappearances a year, especially in rural areas, indigenous regions, and conflict zones. Organized crime networks involved in everything from drug trafficking to organ harvesting, human trafficking, and body part trade. Deep corruption in police and political institutions. Entire departments have been caught working for cartels or covering up mass graves. So what if? The gang was real. The fat was human. The buyers existed and were connected to powerful people. And once the story made international headlines, it was too dangerous to continue. So the general got suspended, the suspects were silenced, and the public was fed just enough doubt to let it fade. Would that be so hard to believe? So what did Peruvian authorities say about the lab results? Here's the shocking truth. They never publicly released any forensic results at all, not even to debunk the fat. Not even to say it was animal fat or vegetable oil. They just went quiet. That's what makes it so strange. If the fat had turned out to be animal lard, pork, goat, or non-human biological material, you'd expect the authorities to say, "Case closed, it wasn't human fat, false alarm." But they didn't. They never clarified what it actually was. Why is this deeply suspicious? Because even a fake case needs an exit strategy. If this were a fabricated scandal, the easiest way to save face would be to say, our field agents were misled. The substance wasn't human fat after all. Our lab tests confirm it's animal-based. We regret the confusion. But no such statement was ever made. Instead, the media storm died. The police suspended the general. And the story vanished, quietly. So what does that suggest? There are only a few possibilities, none of them comforting. One, it was human fat, but they couldn't, or didn't want to, explain how they got it, which implies murder or illegal body sourcing, and they couldn't trace it. Two, the fat was real, but not from a crime, and they exaggerated everything. And once it spun out of control, they preferred to let it quietly die. Three, the fat was not human, but saying so publicly would expose the entire case as fabricated, destroying the reputation of the police force, so they chose strategic silence. 4. There was more to it. Possibly a hidden buyer, a real trafficking network, or state involvement. And shutting down the story was easier than dealing with the consequences. No official clarification to this day, no follow-up press release, no retraction, no published lab report, just one of the most bizarre, silence-drenched endings to a modern criminal investigation. And that silence? It's louder than any confession. Remember this: when a story vanishes without an ending, it's not a mystery. It's a message. Of course, this is all hypothetical. There are no confirmed clues. But when a story this big dies this quietly, you have to wonder, was it just fiction or something worse?